The wind rolled quietly over the open plains of Nebraska, brushing through tall grass and carrying the scent of spring. On a small farm just outside the town of Holbrook lived the Carter family, a humble and hard-working household with strong hearts. Among them was 22-year-old James Carter, a young man whose gentle eyes held both kindness and courage. He worked the fields with his father, repaired fences, played the harmonica during quiet evenings, and teased his 12-year-old sister Emily whenever she tried to act older than her age. Life was simple, peaceful, and filled with the warmth of family. But the world outside was burning. It was 1944, and the war in Europe had swallowed thousands of young men. Posters encouraging enlistment hung in every town. Newspapers carried endless stories of battles overseas. The echo of war was everywhere, even in quiet Nebraska. And eventually, it reached their home too. The day James received his draft letter, Emily was the first to see the fear behind his steady smile. She had always believed that heroes were invincible, but now she understood that even heroes had hearts that could tremble. That evening, when the sun dipped behind the horizon and cast golden light across the farm, James sat beside Emily under their favorite oak tree. He placed a small notebook in her hands. "I'll write you a letter every week," he promised, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No matter where I am, no matter what happens," Emily clutched the notebook to her chest. "And I'll wait for every single one." 2 days later, James hugged his mother tightly, shook his father's hand with strength he didn't entirely feel, and finally knelt down to meet Emily's tearful eyes. He smiled one last time before stepping onto the bus that took him away from everything he knew. The war had begun for their family. From training camp in Texas came his first letter. Emily ran home barefoot, leaving dust clouds behind her as she clutched the envelope triumphantly. James wrote about the scorching heat, the endless drills, and the strange feeling of holding a rifle for the first time. He told her he missed her jokes and asked her to keep an eye on their old dog Max, who always followed him around the farm. The second letter arrived from England. James described green fields, gray skies, and the constant roar of airplanes overhead. He wrote about the friends he made, Tom from Ohio, Leonard from Michigan, and Private Collins, who snored louder than the tanks they trained with. Emily read every word twice, sometimes 3 times, as if reading could bring her brother closer. Weeks turned into months. Letters arrived faithfully, one after another. Some were cheerful, filled with stories about the food, the weather, and the comrades who made him laugh. Others were softer, quieter, describing the exhaustion of long marches, the fear of the unknown, and the moments he wished he could go home just for one night to hear Emily's voice. Emily kept every letter in a wooden box she named the Box of Hope. Whenever she missed James, she opened the box and read his handwriting until it felt like he was sitting beside her again. Then, one cold morning, a letter came that felt different. James wrote that he and his unit were being moved to the front lines in France. He described the sound of distant artillery at night, the way the air seemed heavier, and how he had begun to understand what soldiers meant when they talked about the fog of war. But at the end, he added a line that Emily repeated over and over. "Don't be scared, Emmy. I'll write again soon, I promise." Then the letters stopped. At first, Emily told herself that the mail was delayed. The war was unpredictable. Everyone knew that. But as days turned into weeks, anxiety tightened around her heart. She waited by the mailbox every morning, scanning the horizon for the familiar figure of the postman. She prayed at night, clutching her brother's notebook. Her mother tried to reassure her, but even she looked worried. Her father spent long nights on the porch, staring silently at the dark fields as if hoping James would walk down the road at any moment. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, James was living through the harshest days of his life. His unit had entered a devastated French town where buildings stood like broken teeth, shattered by bombs. The air smelled of smoke and mud. Gunfire echoed through the streets as soldiers fought house by house. James moved with his unit, heart pounding, hands trembling slightly as he gripped his rifle. All he could think about was home, not the farm, not the fields, but the promise he had made to Emily. He still carried a letter in his pocket, the one he meant to send her as soon as he found a way. The battle grew fiercer. When an explosion rocked the street, James shielded a fellow soldier without hesitation. In doing so, he was struck by shrapnel. He fell to the ground, pain spreading through him, but he kept one hand pressed against the letter in his pocket. He whispered his sister's name as the world blurred around him. A medic found him moments later. They tried to save him, but the wound was too deep. The medic placed James's letter gently back inside his jacket before covering him with a blanket. James Carter died on foreign soil, far from the Nebraska farm he loved. Back home, the Carters received the news in the form of a folded American flag and a note of condolences. Emily stood beside her parents, numb and silent as the world she knew fell apart. When the officer finished speaking, she finally asked the question she had been holding in her heart. "Did he leave a letter for me?" The officer shook his head softly. No letter had been found. Emily held her breath until it hurt. That night, she opened the box of hope and read every letter again, tears dripping onto the old paper. She whispered his name into the darkness, wishing she could hear his voice one more time. Life slowly moved on, though the ache never fully left. Emily grew older, she married, had children, and became a teacher. And yet, she kept James's letters in their wooden box, never forgetting the brother who promised to write her every week. Decades passed. Technology advanced, wars ended and began, and the world changed. But one morning in 2004, when Emily was 72 years old, a small package arrived at her doorstep. The return label was from France. Inside, she found a rusted metal box discovered during the renovation of an abandoned military outpost. The box contained soldiers, belongings recovered from the rebel, dog tags, trinkets, photographs. Among them was an envelope, yellowed with age, the ink barely visible. Her heart stopped. On the front, faint but clear, were the words, "For Emily, my last letter." Her trembling hands opened it slowly. The paper inside was fragile, but the handwriting, though shaky, was unmistakably James's. "My dearest Emmy, if you are reading this, it means my journey has ended. I want you to know I am not afraid. I am proud to have protected my country, and even prouder to be your brother. I wish I could have kept my promise and written you many more letters. But if this is the last one, then let it be the one that carries all my love. Emmy, live your life fully. Laugh, love, and dream. I will always be with you, in every sunrise, in every breeze, in every moment of courage you find inside yourself. You are the sunshine of my life, little sister. Your brother, forever, James." Emily pressed the letter to her heart. Tears fell down her cheeks, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming warmth of love that had traveled across time, across oceans, across life itself to reach her. After 60 years, James had kept his promise. Emily placed the final letter in the box of hope, now complete at last. And every year after that, on Veterans Day, she brought fresh flowers to James Carter's memorial and whispered the same words. "Thank you for writing to me, James. I never stopped waiting, and you never stopped loving." The last letter of soldier James lived on, not as a memory of war, but as a testimony